Wands in Noita are the key to your experience. If you got a good wand, you're going to have a much easier time facing your foes, working out how to get from point A to point B without dying. It's not the only thing, but it's really important. If you can't fight something, then you're probably going to end up dead very quickly. So it's pretty good to know how they work and kind of how the spells work, because it gets surprisingly complicated surprisingly quickly. So let's run through your stats on a typical wand. So there's shuffle and spells cast, which we'll go through a bit later. There's cast delay, so that is the delay between the cast of each particular spell slot in your wand. Once your wand is out of spells, it has to recharge. That is your recharge time. Spells take mana, and mana has to recover. So this is a secondary but no less important piece of your wand. If you got a high max mana, often you have a low charge speed, and that means that you can do a lot of stuff for a bit, and then you got to have a longer cool off period. Fortunately, both the recharge time and the max mana do seem to progress when you do not have a wand active, so you just need to swap to a different wand for a bit. You got capacity, that's the maximum number of spells that a wand can hold, and then you got spread, which is how accurate the wand is. It's worth noting that all of these numbers, absolutely all of them, can be further modified by spells. Finally, there's also another piece to this. Some wands will have an always cast effect, which basically, as far as I can tell, the mana drain doesn't actually impact your wand there, but it always will add that effect for free to every single cast on the wand. So that's kind of the basics of the stats of the wand. Let's try and go into a bit about putting spells in wands in the first place. So what happens with no shuffle wand is it will look for a number of spells that are equal to the spells cast. And it'll start from the left and it'll go to the right. So here, this is an empty slot, it's ignored. This is a modifier, so it takes that modifier and adds it to whichever spell it finds next. So here we've got Spitterbolt with a light modifier, and then we've got Fire Trail and an Energy Sphere, and then we've got Explosion on Burning and a Firebomb. So if we fire this the first time, it will do that Spitterbolt with a light effect, which you can see, it's a little bit subtle, and then it has the Fire, and then it has the Energy Sphere, that has the Firebomb, and you can see obviously the Energy Sphere had a Fire Trail. Then you can put in Multicast Modifiers, so Multicast Modifiers will have some effect, but it will let you cast more spells, although be less accurate, so that effectively turns your 1-cast wand into a 3-cast wand, but it's worth noting that it will basically be looking left to right for 3 spells that it can cast, and it will add all of the modifiers that it finds along the way. So this, you can see it casts 3 different spells, all with the Fire Trail modifier, all with light, and all with Explosion on Burning. If we were to modify that slightly differently, we would take a spell that then casts a spell afterwards, then what it will do is that will count as a spell, but this whole thing will count as a spell. So here, when we cast 3, you can see that the Spark Bolt immediately casts this spell. So it treats this as 1 unit. So it has to evaluate whatever the heck this is with this. So then how does that work with with Shuffle? Well, Shuffle, instead of evaluating left to right, it evaluates them randomly. So let's just take this, we'll put this in this way. So that means Spark Bolt, Fire Trail, Energy Sphere, and then we'll put, say, Light and the Spitterbolt. So here, oh look, it just cast Energy Sphere. Then it casts something like Fire Trail. So you can see that Fire Trail is ending up on all sorts of different spells, but it does seem that Spark Bolt with Trigger will also get a random spell. It's totally random. Great. So timer and trigger are pretty much the same kind of deal, except that with a timer it happens after a time, and with trigger it happens when it hits something. So you can do this to your heart's content. I could do something kind of completely useless here and just have timer trigger, regular spell, and you'll actually see here that if I fire that, it just keeps going. One thing that's worth noting is that once you add a modifier to it, that modifier will not apply, it will only apply to one leg of the journey, right? So if I were to put it here and then do that, the modifier falls off because it's not part of these other spells. Whereas with like a triple spell, it hits everything. Alright, then I think that is basically it. So it's the difference between a multicast and a triggered serial trigger, and the way they combine is probably what causes the most confusion there. But hopefully that helps you understand how these spells work, and hopefully lets you build some really cool spells and wands. You probably will kill yourself in this game, because that's just how this game rolls. See you next time.